Arc 7 Chapter 31 Hometown Talk. Subaru's eyes widened as a strong arm grabbed him by the shoulders and turned him around, so much so that the iron helmet staring at him. Al's attitude was unexpected. Subaru. The force of the arm on the grabbed shoulder was also strong and hard to ignore. He could feel the intention of Subaru's self-harming slamming his forehead against the wall, and felt his intention to never let it continue. Al, you shouldn't do that. Subaru : He looked at him, and his breath leaked out as he said the words of restraint again. Immediately, a feeling of pity welled up in the pit of his stomach, as if Subaru had been blamed for his eccentric behavior just before. It was as if he was a character in a game being made to run against a wall. He hadn't even thought about it, which was exactly what he was doing. Al, I don't know if you'll become an idiot if you keep doing that. No, I couldn't leave it like that. That's why I came to stop you. Subaru, thank you for your time. Al, why so formal? Also, your voice is so rusty, it's scaring me. When Al pointed out that his voice was surprisingly scratchy even to himself, Subaru once again mocked himself. He was so affected by the collapse of his mental health and the abomination of his own mental health that he was forced into such a meta situation. It's natural. After all, Rem was the one who told him. Al, was it so hard for you to hear what that girl said? Subaru, what? Al, oh, geez, don't look at me like that. I'm going to shake if you look at me like that. Subaru looked up as if he had been hit by a bullet, and Al shrugged his shoulders in an amused manner. Subaru's glare caused him to step back, but Subaru closed the distance between them and met Al's words head on. Subaru, you were listening to us. Al, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, you know. You just happened to be in the middle of an important conversation when I went to call my bro, so I just thought it would be wrong to interrupt. Subaru, Al, I'm not lying when I say I'm skeptical. Well, after that, my brother started walking like it was the end of the world, so I got worried and followed him. And sure enough, as he said this, Al pointed to the forehead of his helmet. I guess he wanted to say that his fears were right on target. It was not so much that Al was watching closely, but that Subaru was desperate enough to make him think so. The pain in the spot where he had been pointed at, in his forehead where he had been struck, returned, and Subaru turned over in disgust. Subaru, Rem is, Al. Subaru, that's right. What happened with Rem? I mean, after she talked to me. Al, whoa. Don't tell me you were so shocked by what she said that you lost your memory. Please give me a break. If my bro gets amnesia, I'll lose my only friend. Al answered Subaru's question while fiddling with the metal clasp of his helmet with his hand around his head. Unfortunately, the situation that Al was worried about had already happened. However, for Subaru, it was as serious as amnesia, and it was inevitable that the balance of his mind would be shaken. Perhaps seeing Subaru's anxiety in his expression, Al said, don't worry about it. Al, even after you turned pale, bro was still giving decent answers, so I don't think the girl was suspicious of them, right? Subaru, yeah, with Al's seal of approval. Subaru felt a very slight relief. Apparently, Subaru's disgraceful behavior began after he left Rem's presence. If he could barely keep up appearances, he wouldn't have had to worry about Rem. Anyway, Subaru, Al, what did you mean by just now? Al, what do you mean? Subaru, you know how I feel about wanting to die, or something. With his hand on his aching forehead, Subaru asked the truth behind Al's words. Al, I know how you feel about wanting to die. There's no end to it. No matter how many times you try. The feeling of wanting to die and the statement that there is no end to it no matter how many times you try. To be honest, he didn't think it was that tricky to say, but on the other hand, it was too meaningful to say that to Subaru in this situation. Or perhaps it was a statement that made him think that Al knew about Subaru's peculiarity and authority. Al, oh, that, Subaru, I'm sure you're right. You've been making a lot of sense, haven't you? He wondered if he knew something about it. So, Subaru gave Al a suspicious look. He couldn't see his face or eyes, even if he strained his eyes to see the emotion hidden behind the cold steel helmet. At the same time, without seeing his expression and eyes, Al snorts a little. Al, I don't want to say this, but I'm a good old man too, you know? I've been in the same kind of mess as my brothers. I've even acted like a jerk in front of a pretty girl. Subaru, Al, I'm not saying that. It's a common thing for any man to want to die of embarrassment. If you ask me, even at my age, I've done it quite often. When I do it, the princess looks at me like I'm a bug. With a chuckle, Al patted Subaru on the shoulder and gave him a lesson that was typical of his predecessors, taking in the content and his demeanor. Subaru stared back at Al, trying to determine if he was being deceptive or serious. Al, what's up, bro? Subaru, no, it's nothing. However, even if he tried to find out Al's true intentions, he would not be able to do so as he was blocked by the black iron. He has always dismissed Al's outfits as nothing more than eccentricities, but when he confronted him to find out his true intentions, he realized that they were much stronger protection than he thought. But at the same time, he also realized that he was being too nervous. Subaru, there's no way he knows after all. It was just a coincidence that Al's comment had caught Subaru's attention. If Al knew about return by death, he would have tried to show it to Subaru in a more understandable way. The power of redoing is a dangerous thing to have. If he knew it, he couldn't help but touch it, just as Russell did. At the same time, Subaru, not everyone who gets summoned to another world gets some kind of power. He didn't know the details of Al's situation, but he thought it was safe to assume so, because if Al had some kind of special power in him, he could have prevented the loss of his left arm. For example, if Subaru were to lose one of his arms in the same way, then he could have used his power to prevent the loss of his left arm before it happened. Subaru, back. Huh? With that thought in mind, Subaru stared at his left arm intently. It was a hypothetical situation, but a very possible one. In the first place, the only reason why Subaru had survived in good health was because he had made good use of the return to death technique. In the loops where he lost his life, he suffered the loss of an arm or a leg several times. If he had been able to survive and not erase his death, he could have lived with a part of his body missing. Subaru made up his mind that he would never fully rely on return by death. But then, to what extent should he rely on it? How much of his arms, legs, fingers, and eyes would he have to lose in order to decide to rely on it? Above all, what if it wasn't my own limbs, but those of Amelia or Rem? In the Watergate city of Bristol, Subaru did not return to death because of Ricardo's lost arm. Today, he had not returned by death for my Zelda, who lost her leg. He knew that if he used his power, he might be able to obtain better results. He was not going to die in order to go back for my Zelda, even though he knew that using his power could make him achieve better results, reducing the number of things that could lose an arm or a leg and end the path he has been on. Subaru, I'm a hypocrite. Knowing that the authority given to him was a mighty one, he was unable to take a decisive step. Natsuki Subaru was too impotent, too selfish. So Subaru, the Rem, bad loop, bro. He made Rem say that crucial word, too. Subaru's forehead was hit by a powerful pin. The strong sound made him teary-eyed, and he looked at Al. No, Al. Oh, that sounded pretty good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to. Sorry, Subaru. That was not good. What the hell was that? Al, that's a decapitation. So, the questioning power shifts to me, and I'll ask the questions. Al thrusts a flicked finger at Subaru, whose surprise precedes and lags behind the pain. When the finger was thrust into his nose, Subaru involuntarily backed away and kept his mouth shut. Then, Al said, you know what, Al, how staggered are you by that girl's words? It's a shame that she said that to you. Don't you think so yourself? Subaru, that is, Al, I don't want you to get woozy over something like that. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I have expectations on you, brother. Subaru, expectations? Subaru was simply surprised to hear the word he hadn't thought of. Seeing Subaru's reaction, Al nodded deeply and said, yes, that's right. Al, you remember that speech that bro gave at Bristol, right? Subaru, oh, yeah, I do. But, Al, I told you then, man, I told you at the time that broadcasting there would mean that bro would have to carry the hero illusion. The situation was tense. The city had been attacked by the archbishops of sin, and many were in dire straits. He remembered Al's words to Subaru, who was asked to play a role in such a situation, but was unable to take the next step. Hero illusion. He was carrying the illusion of being a hero, which everyone wanted him to be. And at that time, Subaru responded with so much ease. It was the same as always. Al, it's the same here. One person denies you. So what? It's not like it's going to change what bro have done, or turn their resolve inside out. Subaru, Al, don't break it, brother. Bite Tim, brother. Live up to expectations, brother. Al, who knew about Subaru's achievements in the Watergate city, patted him on the back. Rem, who has forgotten everything. Louis, who has gone into infantile regression. Abel, Flop, Medium, and the Shudra people were all unaware of Subaru's work. Priscilla knew, but he doubted she would remember. Al, I haven't forgotten, and I'm sorry, but you're not getting away with this, brother. Subaru, you're not getting away with this, you say. Al, you've started it. I'm telling you, you can't take down the sign you put up until you're dead. Subaru. Subaru gasped again at Al's critical words. He knew that the broadcast in the Watergate city had spread not only to the people in that city who were almost consumed by anxiety and fear, but also to the rest of the world. You can't take down the sign you put up until you die, and unfortunately, death will never come to Subaru. Therefore, he had no choice but to keep fighting. Subaru. Forever. At Al's words, a voice leaks out of Subaru's mouth as he covered his face with both hands and closes his eyes. Echoing in his head all the time was the deadly word spoken by Rem, the deadly word that was about to tear Subaru's heart into 8 pieces and drown him in flowing blood. You're not a hero, you know, Subaru. I've been relying on a single word from Rem all this time, because you're not a hero, Subaru. Rem believed in me, and that's why I didn't break my knees. It was the same in Sanctuary, in Bristol, in the Watchtower of the Pleiades. You're not a hero, you know. Rem woke me up, and I lost my memory, but I'm still happy. I was one step away from getting it all back, and this is the time when I need to hold on the most. You're not a hero, you know, Subaru. Rem woke me up, and she lost her memory, but I'm still happy. I'm one step closer to getting it all back, and this is the time when I need to hold on the hardest. You're not a hero, you know, Subaru. Those were the magic words that kept me going. He was a hero. Rem told him so. That stopped Subaru from throwing everything away and running away, kept him from falling to his knees in front of the sleeping Rem, challenged the blocked sanctuary and the difficult task of the mansion, helped him to save the Watergate city from falling into enemy hands, and shook the soul of Natsuki Subaru, who had lost his memory, helping him and capturing the Pleiades watchtower. And then, because Subaru-kun is Rem's hero, because of that one word, that trust, that support, he was able to make it until today. And now that that was taken away from her, Natsuki Subaru was Al. Then we'll get it back. Subaru : What? With his face covered, Subaru was drowning in a darkness too deep to be called the back of his eyelids, but he gasped at Al's words and looked up. He looked up and saw Al's face right in front of him. However, just as he had done earlier, Al stepped forward this time, just as he had stepped back. Soon his back hits the wall and he couldn't move back any further, as if to force Subaru to back off. Al stretched out his arm to block Subaru's escape. And then Al, we're going to get it back. We're going to regain that girl's expectations, and the confidence of Bro themselves. Subaru, expectations and confidence. Al, we can't take down the sign. We have to fight. And if you can't stay defeated, you have to keep winning as you wish. That's how we're going to win and get it back. Subaru, Al, lost expectations and reputation can only be regained with better results. You know this from your own experience. The cold iron helmet hit his forehead as his face was brought closer. However, Al appealed to Subaru so strongly and sincerely that they didn't even notice that their foreheads were touching each other. This fact had a great impact on Subaru. Above all, Al's words seemed to have a point or two. The most bitter memory for Subaru was, of course, the blunder at the royal castle. At that time, Subaru had lost Amelia's trust and expectations, as well as the reputation of the candidates for the royal election. The only reason he was able to regain their trust afterwards was because he took action. It wasn't because he was devastated and banged his forehead against the wall. Subaru, am I an idiot? No, I'm an idiot. That's exactly the same as when he did it at the king's castle, isn't it? At that time, too, Subaru was trying to turn away from the big hole in his life in order to escape the huge pain in front of him, under the disguise of asking Wilhelm to train him. But now, Subaru could not afford to be so weak. He had to protect Rem and bring her home. There was no one else he could turn to for that purpose. For Rem, there was only Subaru, and in order to reassure Rem, who was surrounded by anxiety without any memories, he couldn't show his pathetic appearance in front of her anymore. Even if Rem, who has forgotten everything, said that Subaru was not a hero, even if the same face and voice retracted the words that had strongly supported Subaru's back. Subaru, I'm Rem's hero. Natsuki. Subaru's true nature was to keep on beating his chest. Al, hey, did you get your energy back? Hearing Subaru's determination, the sternness in Al's voice was removed. Yeah, he replied, looking up at Al at close range. Subaru, it's much better, but back off. Back off. What the hell is this walled on? Al, right, my bro is a cross-dresser, and I'm a 40-year-old man without one hand. Laughing heartily, Al pulled his hand from the wall and stepped back. As he did so, his vision opened up, and it seemed to Subaru that he was able to expand his horizons beyond what was right in front of him. In all honesty, Al's words were only a first aid, and the fatal wound had not been completely closed. He was not sure that if he were to go in front of Rem, his legs would shake, he would have to look at her again, and he would be afraid that she would say the same thing to him. He hasn't been able to come up with an answer as to how much and for what purpose he will use the power of return by death. He was sure that even if he thought about it in his head, he won't be able to come to a conclusion until the moment comes. But he could say it clearly. This arrogant authority that Natsuki Subaru possessed was indispensable to make the heroic illusion that he had to bear on his back a real one. That's why he was sure he will continue to be confused about how to deal with it in the future. Al, right bro, I'd like to ask you something. While looking down at his hands and renewing his mind, Al suddenly spoke up, sounding uncomfortable. Subaru wondered about Al's attitude, who had not shown any sign of reserve up to this point. Subaru, it's a little late for that. If there's something you want to ask, just ask. Al, then, I'll feel free to ask. What kind of position is that Rem girl? Twisting his head, Al uttered the question. It was a question that was too late to ask. It was only when Al asked that Subaru realized that there was no explanation. Al, it was my bro's companion that he brings all the way to the Empire. She's not a half-elf girl or a contracted Lili. On top of that, you're treating her like a wife, right? Subaru, that's for convenience, and she doesn't like it. Al, but that little girl's words are tearing bro to pieces. What the hell is that? Al lowered his voice slightly and asks in a very serious manner. In the first place, he had never even brought up the subject of Rem in front of Al. It was only natural that he didn't know about Rem, and yet, it caught him slightly. It was probably because of Al's attitude towards the question. Al, I couldn't see his expression, but I could feel the heat in his gaze. This was the first time he'd ever seen such a thing. Subaru was bewildered by the unfamiliar appearance of Al that was shown to him in such a short time, including the previous exchange. He was the only one who survived in the other world with his aloof, carefree, and unserious attitude, as he felt his impression of Al fluctuating within him. Subaru, Rem is one of our people. However, she was victimized by the deadly sin Bishop of Gluttony. Because of that, she's gone from anyone's memory, and she doesn't even remember herself. Al, so that's what happened. I see, that makes sense. Subaru agreed, as Subaru simply stated the truth. Al put his hand on his chin and nodded repeatedly. When Subaru's head twisted at the words that escaped from his mouth, he said, yeah, Al, I've been stuck on something. It was supposed to be a girl I didn't know, but it looked like a girl I did know. It was asserting itself like a small bone of a hooked fish. Subaru, you don't know her, but you know her. Are you talking about Ram? Al, oh, yes. Al's voice fluttered as Subaru blinked at the unexpected connection that had popped up. However, it also convinced Subaru of Al's attitude. Thanks to everyone in Emilia's camp, he was well aware of how to react when one of the two, Ram and Rem, lost their memories. Even Russell and Frederica, who have known each other for a long time, completely lost track of her existence until they saw the real Rem, and once they met her face to face, they never doubted the fact that they were twin sisters. Aside from their personalities and qualities, Ram and Rem's twins were really very similar. No, surprisingly, he's been thinking lately that they might be similar in their nature as sisters. Anyway, he now knew what Al's strange feeling was. Knowing Ram, it would be confusing to see a Rem who looked exactly like her. Subaru, but I've never heard of you and Ram knowing each other. Al, it's not like we know each other. We're not really acquaintances. We're just sort of related. It's not so much that we know each other. Twin sisters, huh? So you want to reunite them? Subaru, oh, yeah. Getting Rem to reunite with Ram was a top priority. After that, Subaru's main goal is to welcome Rem with everyone in the Emilia camp and bring her back to where she belongs. To do this, he cannot afford to lose Rem's trust. He must do whatever it takes to regain her trust and get her to hold this hand back. Al, okay, I'll help you, brother. Subaru hardens his fists as he once again focuses on the big goal in front of Subaru. Al, who had been chewing over the situation that had been told to him, nodded and said so. Unintentionally, Subaru let out a dumb voice. What? Subaru let out a dumb voice and said, Al, brother, you just made a really dumb squeal, didn't you? Subaru, leave me alone. I mean, what did you say? Do you want to help? Help who? Al, I'll do it for my brother, and I'm sure the princess will have a lot to say about that, but you can do whatever you want with it. Anyway, I've decided that I'm going to stick up with you, Subaru. Al, but I only have one arm's worth of shoulder to put into it. Subaru, that's not funny. He said it with annoying enthusiasm, and Subaru was puzzled even as he quickly said it back. I guess that's true. I don't know what in the world tugged at Al's heartstrings. Subaru, since you know, Ram, you're going to help me? Al, it's not like that. It's Bro I'm rooting for. In any case, if Bro is going to be a hero, he can't leave out the girl. I'm talking about helping them. Subaru, I'm not trying to be a hero. Al, you will be. Natsuki Subaru will be a hero. It was a way of interrupting without saying number. It was a strong, quiet statement, and the heat that it held within it burned Subaru's heart. Al, joking however, the intense heat dissipated at the sound of Al's joking voice. Al waved his hand and said, sorry about that, Al, but let's keep that kind of spirit, bro. It's better for lazy people like me and my brothers to bluff our way out a little. As he said this, Al turned away and walked off with a jaunty gait, lagging behind his stately gait. Subaru called him Al. Subaru, that was, whoa, let's not go off on a tangent here. After all, as I recall, I came to call my brothers to the conference hall. I'm pretty sure the princess is going to give me an hard time. Subaru, Al, come on, let's hurry up. There's always a chance to talk. With that, Al turned his head and shrugged his shoulders, gesturing for him to start running. Subaru, hastened by this gesture, had no choice but to retract his concern. He didn't know how much of what Al just said he should take seriously. Nevertheless, the declaration of cooperation from the front gave Subaru more than a little power to look forward to. Even if forced to do so, Subaru had to look forward. He had to keep his chest up, straighten his back, and spread his legs wide as he walked. Subaru, Rams, if you're a hero, you'll lose your place to affirm yourself. Heroic illusion, huh? As he ran, a murmur echoed only inside his steel helmet. He closed his eyes, uttering a voice that cannot be heard outside, only to be heard by himself, and so, with his eyes closed, he let it echo in the darkness behind his eyelids. Al, you will be a hero, brother. No, Natsuki Subaru.